Hello everyone. Today we're going to start talking about operations using polynomials. So today specifically we're going to learn how to add and subtract polynomials. Before we can learn the method of adding and subtracting, we first need to know what a polynomial is. So for our definition there, it says a polynomial is an expression with multiple terms consisting of, it's going to be coefficients. Remember, coefficients are the numbers in front. Variables, those are letters, and exponents. Okay, so an expression with multiple terms consisting of coefficients, variables, and exponents. That is what a polynomial is. Now, there is a few things to remember. So, with a polynomial, operations will include adding, subtracting, and multiplying. So notice that there is not any dividing. Once you divide, it turns it into a different type of function. So for polynomials, it's strictly adding, subtracting, and multiplying. And then one little extra rule there is that you cannot have any negative exponents. So remember, exponents are going to be part of your polynomial, but if it's a negative exponent, it no longer counts as a polynomial. Okay, so there are three types, or there's more than three types, but these are the three types that we're going to look at a lot here in this class. And depending on what they are, they'll have a different name. So the first one is a monomial. And a monomial is when your polynomial only has one term. So like if you just had regular x, that would be a monomial. Or if you had something like 3y, again, monomial. A binomial, so kind of like think of bicycle. Bi means two because it has two wheels. This one is going to have two terms. And then that last one, trinomial. So again, that little prefix tri, think of like triangle, has three sides. So trinomial has three terms. Once it's more than three, we tend to just say the word polynomial to mean anything bigger than three. But you do need to know these three right here, monomial, binomial, trinomial, because sometimes I'm going to refer to things as one of those words, and I want to make sure we all know what we're talking about. So now that we know what a polynomial is, let's get into the operation. So let's get into how do we add a polynomial. So it's actually really simple. All you need to do is combine your like terms by adding their coefficients. So obviously adding goes with adding polynomials. And remember, like terms means that it has to be the same variable and the same exponent. So let's look at our first example right here. It says find the sum of the following polynomials. Here's our example number one. Let's zoom in so we can see this a little better. My first polynomial is x squared minus 5x plus 2, and then we're adding it to another trinomial, 2x squared plus 3x minus 4. So in order to constitute a like term, has to have the same variable, same exponent. So keeping that in mind, it's kind of in order, so this is set up pretty easy. In the first polynomial, only the first term has x squared. Like I know the second one has an x, but it doesn't have a little 2, so those are not the same. And then in the second polynomial, my first term has an x and it's squared. So that makes those two like terms. So what we're going to do is we're going to add their coefficients. This one has a 2 in the front. That's kind of easy to see. But in the first one, it doesn't have a number in front of it. But this is something that we already know. When there's no number there, it's invisible 1. So if we add those up, 1 plus 2 gives me 3. So that would be 3x squared. Okay, now we move on to the next one. So I have negative 5x. I'm going to underline it twice. So it can only combine with something that has the same variable, same exponent. So only something that has an x. So if I look at the other trinomial right after, right in the middle, I have positive 3x. So we're going to combine their like terms by adding their coefficients. Negative 5 plus 3 gives me negative 2x. And then last, I'm sure you guys can see this already, this one and this one, so I'm underlining it 3 times, those are like terms because they are just constants. They don't have a variable with them. So when I combine them, 2 plus negative 4 gives me negative 2. So this right here would be my answer when I add those two polynomials up. Okay, let's do another example just so we can keep on practicing. I want to add these two polynomials now. So the first one is 2x to the third power plus 3x to the second power minus 8 plus my other polynomial 4x to the third power minus 12. So we're going to combine like terms. This term has x to the third power, and so does this term, x to the third power. So we can combine those by adding, and we know that 2 plus 4 is 6. So that would be 6x to the third power. Then I have 3x to the second power. But if you look at the other polynomial, there is nothing that has x to the second power. So it has nothing to combine with, which means that it's going to stay exactly the same. So we're just going to write it down here, plus 3x to the second. And then last is those constants, negative 8 and negative 12. Those don't have any variables, so they can go together. And when you add those up, that gives you negative 20. Okay, so this would be our answer when we add up those polynomials. Okay, so now that we know how to add, let's look at what we would have to do when we subtract. Okay, so up there it says, first you're going to distribute the minus sign to the second polynomial, then you can combine like terms by adding their coefficients. So notice how when you're subtracting, in the definition, nowhere does it say that you're actually going to subtract the numbers. You're actually going to add the numbers, but before you can add, you need to distribute that minus sign. Remember, distribute means that you're going to multiply. So what's going to happen is that the signs in the second polynomial are going to change. So just to show you, let's look at our first example. I have 3x squared plus 7x minus 1, then minus the polynomial x squared plus 2x minus 5. So if I follow the steps from above, it says that the first thing we need to do is get this minus sign and distribute it to everything that's after it. So since we're not doing anything to the first polynomial, I'm just going to rewrite it. Right, that's my first polynomial. But now we're going to get this negative sign and distribute it. So this would become negative x squared. And then when I distribute it to the next one, it's going to be negative 2x. And then when I distribute it to the last one, be careful here, a negative times a negative makes it positive. So that's going to turn into plus 5. So now that we distributed that negative sign, now we can add them. We can treat it like addition. So this first one has x squared, and this term has x squared. We can add them and put them together. So this would be, remember that invisible 1 here. So it'd be 3 minus 1 gives me 2x squared. Okay, now for the next one, have positive 7x and negative 2x. We're going to add those up. 7 plus negative 2 gives me positive 5x. And then last I have negative 1 and positive 5. And when we add those two numbers together, we get positive 4. So this would be my answer when I subtract those polynomials. So it's pretty similar to adding, almost exactly the same. It just has that extra step of having to distribute the negative sign. So let's do one more so that we can practice. Okay, so this one's a little bit longer, but it's okay. We'll figure it out. So 2x to the third power minus 5x plus 3, and then minus the other polynomial, 5x to the third power, 2x to the second power, minus 7x plus 2. Okay, so first thing that we need to do is this negative sign in the middle. We want to distribute it. So I'm going to rewrite this first one just so that it's there. Okay, so then now let's distribute. Negative times 5 is going to be negative 5x cubed. Then to the next one, so minus 2x squared. Now the next one, be careful, we have negative times another negative makes that positive 7x. And then the last one, minus 2. So now that I have that minus sign distributed to the second polynomial, I can go ahead and add these like normal. Okay, so I have 2x to the third power and negative 5x to the third power. So since they have the same, x to the third, all I have to do is combine their coefficients. So 2 minus 5 gives me negative 3. Okay, so normally we want our polynomials to be in order from the biggest exponent to the smallest exponent. So if I started with a 3, then my next term should have x to the second power, then x to the regular. But this first polynomial doesn't have x to the second power. But you have to be careful because the second one does. So we're going to include this as our next term. I'm going to box that. That's going to be our next term because it has x to the second power, and it's the only one. The first polynomial didn't have it. Okay, now for our next term, I have negative 5x and positive 7x. We're going to add those up, and that gives us positive 2x. And then last but not least, I have positive 3 and negative 2. We're going to add those together, and that gives me positive 1. So the answer here, when I subtract those polynomials, is this right here. Okay, guys, and that's all that there is to adding and subtracting polynomials. Basically, you just need to be able to combine like terms. So if you have any questions, just please let me know, and I will see y'all again tomorrow.